Thank you all for being here today. We're going to make some announcements about major investments in infrastructure for our state using some COVID relief funding that was actually appropriated by Congress this past December. As I mentioned, in December, Congress passed the 2020 Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, which allocates $216 million towards road and infrastructure projects throughout the state of Louisiana. This funding is going to greatly benefit Louisiana's transportation system and help push forward some much needed repairs, improvements, projects that have been on the books for a while. These funds will allow DOTD to enhance our existing roadways as well as create new infrastructure in order to better meet the needs of our state and make sure that our economy very quickly moves forward and gets back to thriving. But we also want thriving communities and families and motorists. That's what this is all about. Since January of 2016, my administration has invested more than $3.9 billion in infrastructure projects throughout the state, more than 1,600 projects benefiting more than 5,000 miles of roadway. I and all of these legislators behind me are extremely grateful for the work that Congress did, especially our delegation. And I do want to single out Senator Cassidy for his efforts to ensure that the departments of transportation all across the country receive this relief because of the impact that COVID-19 had on traffic. And as you know, the way we support our infrastructure system is through revenues generated by those who use our system. And when that use dropped, so did the funding. And that's what this is designed to make up for. And as part of that COVID relief bill approved in December, Congress passed a $1.4 trillion relief package that includes $10 billion to be allocated by formula among all state departments of transportation. And we're going to continue in Louisiana to make transportation a priority and ensure that our motorists have the infrastructure they need to access goods and services and their traveling needs, and to do that safely. To that extent, I'm also sharing that I'm continuing my commitment to use surplus dollars in a way that makes a lot of sense too. And so one of those things that we're going to be proposing is that $35 million from last year's surplus go towards our match obligations so that we can secure all of the federal transportation trust funds that we're entitled to. This is something we've done for several years now, and certainly we're going to continue that. And any other infrastructure projects, whether it's for highways, CPRA, state buildings, and so forth, from surplus, those are going to be one-time projects because surplus, by definition, one-time money. And for those of you keeping score, yes, we're obviously going to put into the unfunded accrued liability and into the budget stabilization funds those portions of the surplus that are required to go there. I'm going to ask Dr. Wilson now to come up and tell you more specifically about the specific projects that are going to be funded through the coronavirus relief funds that were appropriated in December. And I'm not planning to come back up and speak, so I did want to take just a moment and thank all the legislators behind me and many more in the building who are not out here today for working with us and working with DOTD to make sure that we have a list of projects that are ready to go, and then they help us to marry the funding to those projects so that we can move forward. And it's really important when Congress has money for transportation that we have those projects developed and that they're ready to go, because they always want to see those projects get started just as soon as possible. And that's why Shawn is going to make the announcements about these specific projects. Shawn?
Thank you, Governor. I will tell you that we're excited to receive these funds, as other DOTs around the country have also prioritized these projects. We've referred back to our Highway Priority Program and a number of projects that are going to set us up in the future to use additional resources to deliver these projects. Louisiana's share of the funding that Congress has allocated comes to about $216 million, intended to replace funds that were lost as a result of a reduction in traffic due to the coronavirus. And it was done so based on a national formula where we get resources on an annual basis. Of that dollar amount, $123 million will be allotted for what we're calling major projects, major investments within that time frame. They include adding $30 million to the public subsidy that Governor Edwards has already allocated for the Calcasieu River Bridge. He put up $85 million in capital outlay a couple of years ago, and that's a part of our P3 procurement. We also have a portion of widening on I-20 in Ouachita Parish that we're going to use some of these funds for. And then in working with members of the delegation out of Acadiana, we're allocating money to the I-49 connector project in Lafayette that is expected to soon complete its environmental process, and that'll be the first portion of funds dedicated to move directly into construction. And then we're also going to do an I-20 overlay from Monkhouse Drive to Greenwood Road and an I-20, I-49 interchange in Caddo Parish. Another major investment will be using some of the funds to relocate utilities along 190 in St. Landry Parish. That is a major rehabilitation of a U.S. highway where utilities sit actually in the roadbed itself. Of the balance of the funds, we're going to allocate $36 million to 17 preservation projects from the Transportation Highway Priority Program, and those will be spread out across a number of parishes. $25 million will be allocated to the Department of Transportation districts. They're going to do two different things with them. In some cases, in all cases rather, they're going to be asked to address a congestion issue within their districts, as well as replace aged equipment needed for maintaining highways. Those are going to be everything from sweepers to equipment to clean culverts and other things that will help us deal with additional water and flooding situations. Specifically directed in the legislation is $11 million to go towards electric vehicle charging stations. It's a national initiative of President Biden and Secretary Buttigieg to prepare us for the onslaught of electric vehicles, and developing charging stations for fleets is a major portion of that. Then there's money allocated to communities that have greater than 200,000 people, and we have 4 in Louisiana. And these are going to be what we call MPO dollars, where $19.9 million will be distributed based on a formula to New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Lafayette, and Shreveport for those MPOs to allocate to projects in their areas. And so that's a compilation of how we're going to spend the money that was directly appropriated to USDOT, given to us through the Federal Highway Administration. I would like to express appreciation to the congressional delegation and the members of our House and Senate Transportation Committees and their leadership, as well as the leadership in the House and the Senate. They've been a tremendous resource for this Department of Transportation and Development, and we look forward to working with them to address other critical needs. And lastly, I will tell you, we will apply all of these funds to the most needed projects throughout all of the regions of Louisiana and further this administration's commitment to building economy through infrastructure investment. Today we made an announcement of funds that Congress appropriated to the U.S. Department of Transportation in response to the coronavirus recovery effort. And so Louisiana's share, that is approximately $200 million, and we've identified a number of preservation projects that will fit within the criteria, as well as some larger scale projects, interstate widenings and improvements, some utility relocation. And then we're going to also allocate dollars to every DOTD district for them to provide some congestion relief on one location, as well as to restore some of the equipment that we have in our system so that we can appropriately manage and operate our system.
And you've got some key projects in this project too.
That's correct. So we're allocating $50 million, for example, to I-49 South. It's in the environmental process, and so consistent with what we've done all over the state in terms of mega projects, as you culminate the environmental process, we accelerate a procurement process, and we have funds in hand ready today to move the first project on I-49 South. We're also doing some projects on I-20, both in the Caddo area as well as in the Monroe area. And then I have another really big project happening on our state system over in Calcasieu. It's the Lake Charles Bridge Public-Private Partnership, and we're going to allocate $30 million toward the overall cost of that project. It's expected to be anywhere from $700 to $800 million in a P3 format, and so a part of that process requires us to add additional public subsidy to kind of defray the cost of the project borne by the public and users. And so we're now adding $30 million to the $85 million that the governor had previously allocated.
What kind of a time frame are you operating under?
A number of these projects, for example, in the case of preservation, will be in the next year, and then the larger projects will be in the second year, provided they're all obligated by the end of the fiscal year of 2023, 2024 fiscal year. So we're planning this so that we don't create a peak in our system from an economic standpoint, so that the industry can respond consistently with a number of these projects.
And what's your reaction to this entire deal?
Well, I'm excited about it. I mean, clearly this is going to satisfy a major need. It allows us to, in a balanced way, support preservation, support the operations of our system, and in certain cases help provide capacity and incentivize innovative public delivery of projects.
How can people get more information?
They'll be able to go to the website. We're going to release a full public announcement today listing all of the projects, and then just pay attention to the regular Highway Priority Program. All of these projects were in the Highway Priority Program at some point in the near future, and so we're accelerating some of them by moving this forward, and it basically allows other projects behind them to move up as well.